As you can see, I love my video game intros. They are for me an important part of the entire experience. You mess it up, and it can leave a sour taste in your mouth for a while until the game corrects itself, if it ever does. Bayonetta 2 is arguably the best action game ever made. It's certainly one of the best games ever made, and it lets you know this from the very beginning. An opening chapter that sets the pace of the entire game, and the pace itself never really lets up afterwards as you're thrown on a wild, action-packed thrill ride unlike anything seen in gaming before. Then you have Bayonetta herself, who for me has become one of the best female characters in gaming, today, due to her strong will, her confidence, her sass, hints of narcissism, amazing abilities that are fully utilized in the gameplay, and her exaggerated yet wonderful character design. Not many other characters can get away with so much, while still having a player like them at the end. Bayonetta 2 is a sequel, of course, so the game needs to address this by reintroducing returning characters in a cutscene that has you smiling while still being intrigued at the same time, whether you're a returning player to this world or a new one. This initial cutscene might borderline on being a little too long at first, but it doesn't really take long before Platinum Games quickly reminds you that anything is possible in the world of this glorious Umbra Witch. And it all starts off with Bayonetta kicking a crashing fighter jet into the air. Let me just say that again. She kicks a fighter jet into the air. You know straight away that this game is going to be mental. The type of mental I feel that every action game should be. As the plane trundles skywards, Bayonetta jumps up to follow it, stands on top of the plane which is now careening through the sky, and she starts doing what she was born to do, pretty much. Taking down the forces of heaven and hell, but with some serious style and sex appeal. How Platinum Games introduces Bayonetta for some might feel over the top and slightly provocative, but for me, I absolutely love it. Very rarely do we get a developer who's not afraid to create whatever they want just because of those who might start throwing political correctness cards towards them. Characters like Bayonetta can and do exist personality-wise, and I personally see no harm in developers portraying such personas. Bayonetta is loud and proud, and so she should be. As you fight on top of the fighter jet, Platinum Games wants the player to feel constantly engaged, and they achieve this by throwing in enemies that most games would consider as end-level bosses. This is something that Platinum Games have pretty much mastered. They constantly add more powerful enemies into the mix, give them a flashy little intro that the player knows that this is going to be a new powerful enemy type. Then after the player defeats that new powerful enemy, that same enemy now becomes a standard encounter later on in the game. How does the player cope with such changes? This is thanks to the near perfect, it could just be perfect, near perfect battle system that the Bayonetta series is famous for. Mastering Bayonetta's Witch Time, a mechanic that slows down time for a short moment, if you dodge an enemy's attack at the right time, will make all the difference in the world when it comes to every encounter in the game. And it's something that the developers throw at the player immediately, giving them essentially no choice but to master Bayonetta's moveset and become her persona itself in gameplay. A character and player that can stylishly and effortlessly dodge and encounter any enemy's attacks, something that offers a wonderful amount of satisfaction. Very similar to what Beautiful Joe offered. Well, to put it simply, you just need to be beautiful. The whole intro to this game, with the pace that it's going, lasts only a few minutes, believe it or not, But in those few minutes, as you can see, you're fighting on top of a fighter jet that is slowly getting destroyed by the continuous assault from the forces of heaven. You're then thrown off the fighter jet as two large bosses try to take you out. Then, without a breath, you jump onto a speeding train that is getting chased by another hulking boss who you fight, partnered up with Zhong, your close friend and returning character to the series. And finally, to solidify this fast and intense intro, you're pitted against a giant demonic dragon type entity in an epic battle up a skyscraper that ends with this defiant demonic beast being devoured by another demonic entity. Finally, the game gives you a moment to breathe as you discuss these recent events over a cocktail in the bar whilst listening to some chill jazz music, as if all of this was nothing more than a regular thing, which in the world of Bayonetta it is, and as a player I wouldn't want it any other way. The amazing thing that Platinum Games achieves from these first few minutes of gameplay is that they set a level of greatness that you feel might not be topped, because this intro is so epic, but Platinum Games do not disappoint with future battles and moments in this game. Bayonetta 2 is a marvel after marvel of fantastic gameplay and incredible stages and boss fights. For the player, they are introduced to the main character at the very start, her wonderful skill set, the pace of the game, the intrigue into the insane story, and the spectacle of it all that never lies to you in the many over-the-top cutscenes, because the main gameplay is even more over-the-top. It's truly a masterclass in game design and execution, I feel. As players, we shouldn't ever underestimate how difficult it is for developers to deliver consistent pacing within a game that not only keeps the players engaged, but also doesn't bring in any unwanted fatigue, and most of all, keeps the perceived promises of gameplay presented to the player. Bayonetta 2 is a game that simply has to be experienced by yourself to truly understand its glorious madness, and an intro that will stay ingrained in your gaming memory forever. This, my beautiful people, is how you start a video game.
No one said you could touch.